It's a very hot summer day in Bangalore, and welcome back to another edition of Let's Talk Climate Change. Today, it's a real pleasure to have Dr. Natesh with us. This is a conversation we've been planning for some months now. And Dr. Natesh has been busy after he released his very recent and lovely book, Iconic Trees of India. And we are also doing a public lecture now in the Bangalore International Center. It's been lovely to pull him in for what we hope is a very long conversation. I'll do a quick introduction and we'll get more, I think, on Dr. Natesh as we go along. He has taught botany at the University of Delhi for many years, and as many of our guests to this conversation, he's had a very rich and varied career after that. He joined the Department of Biotechnology at the DBT in India and worked with the government for many years in a range of areas, essentially stimulating DBT to work on biotechnology, bioresources, bioprospecting, and set up a lot of different task forces, knowledge areas to, for instance, document the plant species in the Western Ghats and Eastern Ghats of India very recently. And we'll talk about this, not very recent, actually, 15 years ago maybe, set up the biodiversity butterfly park at the Banakata Biological Reserve. So he's done a range of interesting things. Perhaps most interesting is the journey of the book itself and his passion for trees, which led him to document and write about the 100 most iconic trees of India. His work is an inspiration. I think his enthusiasm and knowledge and passion for trees, plants, and everything botanical is a real inspiration. So without further ado, Dr. Natesh, such a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you very much for inviting me here, Professor Harini. And as you said, we have been planning to do this for some time, and I'm very happy to be here.
That's great. So I'll start with one of the things when we talk to a lot of people on the show about why they're interested in issues of nature. Some say that it was a childhood obsession. They used to go bird watching or tree spotting or something like that. Some say no, it was something I came to much later. So it could be a range of things. So what was your background like? Where did you grow up? And what were your early exposures to nature?
I was born in Mysore, and we came from a middle-class family. And my parents were very knowledgeable about plants. And we were a traditional family, actually, with all these festivals and so on. And for each of these festivals, I was taught which god, for example, loves which leaf, which flower, whatever. And as I grew up, as a small boy, I was taught these plants by my father and mother. And then I would have to put them in the sequence in which they have to be presented to the gods on those festivals. So my knowledge grew up with the plants like that. And I took it over as I became older. And probably that is something that I must have, done something to me about plants. And I guess I enjoyed doing that too.
And did you grow up in this heart of Mysore or in the fringes of Mysore?
No, I was born in Mysore city. And in those days, about some 7 decades ago, wherever, Mysore was not, even smaller than what it is today. And we were surrounded with plants everywhere. And, my maternal grandfather, he was supposed to have been an Ayurvedic Pandit. So my mother used to know uses of many plants, which plant should be used for which medicine and so on. So part of that, I learned. And it was amazing the kind of, the range of plants these people knew those days. Today, when I started teaching botany in Delhi in the 70s, I must have asked in one of my classes that, when you come tomorrow, name 4 plants when you walk to your bus stop from your home. So one of the students said, "Sir, I couldn't find any tree." I said, "Where do you live?" He said, "I live in Chandni Chowk, the heart of the old
correct.
Delhi, where the gullies are so narrow that you can extend your hand like this, you can touch both the walls on either side. Where is the space for trees there?" So it was amazing to me that there are such places, because Mysore is the Royal Mysore those days was full of Bollywood's avenue trees and so on. So it must have had some kind of effect on me.
I'm trying to think of Bangalore when I grew up. So even 70s and 80s Bangalore, I remember there were many things that you would find in the neighboring plot or on the roadside. For instance, and you're talking about puja, there would be certain pujas where you needed this flower or that.
Correct.
You wouldn't buy it from the market.
No,
You would go
nobody
and pick
would
it
buy.
up.
Yeah.
So, and one again, I suppose this was a lady who would come in a certain season and actually sell from the cart. So,
absolutely.
and when I had a mouth sore, our the lady who used to clean the house would go and get this kashi sapo. And we would chew that, So those kinds of things, you didn't have to go anywhere. Or if I had a thorn in my hand or foot, my mother would put the milkweed sap, right? And these were things. My mother's paternal grandmother was also an Ayurvedic Vaidya. Okay. And so she had a lot of these understandings. So you put this for this, if a mosquito bites you, you would take this oma.
Right.
And you rub it and the itching goes away. So I grew up with a lot of those things, but now I realize if you don't have them in your garden, you're not going to find them on the roads.
Many things have disappeared, as I have been now seeing in Delhi, where I live. When I moved into, near my house in Mayur Vihar, we had a huge field where there were lots of these weeds, growing basically. Now there are buildings that have come up. Many of the plants are completely disappeared. In our days, when I was a small child, we hardly used to go to the doctor for small things, You had throat pain, then they would make this Lucas aspera, it was called. It's a labiaty plant, Tulsi family. They would, make a paste of that with honey and make that on a leaf of beetle leaf. And then they put that paste on your throat. And then you used to use this charcoal, this thing, and you dry it off. And then you get up in the morning and the throat pain would have gone.
Okay.
So you grew with this kind of simple thing, as you rightly said. There's a cut on your hand, or there is a mosquito bite or insect bite. You knew what to use. You just go out of your house and in your backyard or somewhere you would find many things those days.
So the thing is, I think it was possible to be a city child of Mysore and Bangalore and still be a child of nature.
Absolutely.
Mysore, it is probably still possible to an extent, but Bangalore, it is not possible.
No, we are growing away from nature as the price you pay for urbanization. As I said, places like Chandni Chowk, you might not have had that opportunity in Delhi.
True.
But there are other parts of Delhi which had, at least New Delhi had open spaces in the 60s, 70s. But now Delhi has also grown so much. And
so my parents were in JP Nagar, and when we first moved there, which is in the 80s, we had toads, frogs, a rat snake which used to live below a coconut tree. There was a stone, it had taken up residence there. All these things were there. And I realized that when my daughter was born in 2007, how you take children to typically feed them and you show them something. So there was a lady who used to come with cows and the cow used to forage in the field next to us. And she was cow aji. So if cow aji was there was no problem. She was looking at the cows. Otherwise, there was a millipede next to a tree at the end of my lane, and that disappeared after a few months. And then I remember looking in all the empty plots and getting touch me not. And the touch me not plant, Mimosa pudica, planting it in my garden. I mean, who would think that that a touch me not is something that you need to put in your garden to show a child that you can touch it and it would close, because it is such weedy, It used to be there everywhere.
My mother tells me of a story where a cobra used to live on one of the beams on their hall. And it never bothered them and they never bothered it, apparently. This was before I was born. Not in Mysore, but they were traveling all over. My father was in the health department. So they have lived in so many places, Koppa and, all these places, Shumaga and you name it. And one of those houses apparently had a cobra. And it was peaceful coexistence for both of them. I mean, I can't think of that today. And, they had some kind of understanding with the rest of the world, a natural world, that it's only not meant for us alone, but they have a right to be there also. But now we seem to think that it's only meant for us, and we are cutting off their corridors, and we are preventing, we are moving away so much that I don't think the next generation will name 10 plants or 15 plants
That they would know
that
instinctively.
would know and
Yeah.
know the use of,
Yes. Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah. Then why were you a bird watcher also? Or were you just someone that grew up with plants? Because the common things that I find is people like trees or people like bird watching.
Yeah, I'm still not a very great expert, but there were lots of birds. There was this a sewage farm where we used to be close by, a couple of miles or something, and we had cattle at home, and they used to take that to graze in those. And I have been on so many weekends, for example. You go with somebody and spend the whole day there, and sit there and enjoy. You can't think of such pastimes today. The television and the mobile phones are taken away that time from you.
So, but then why did you? I mean, you chose botany, I think, no, for your
I
your
chose it
undergraduate
only
or
when I came to college.
to college. And what was the reason for selecting that? Because your father was doing something very different. So,
Yeah, nobody in our house had taken botany or life sciences as it. Those days, the intelligent students always used to take physics and maths. Those who didn't have enough
correct.
brains would go to
Correct.
biology because
Correct.
you don't need to use
Correct.
maths. I think I was one of those.
No, obviously not. But what took you then? You didn't like? Was it?
In school, I didn't have very good teachers. My schooling was disrupted between Bangalore and Mysore. And I didn't have one settled life then.
Huh.
But once I went to college, it was very different. I had very inspiring teachers. I went to Pune to do my college
Oh, no,
in
you did not.
65. No, I never studied in after my SSLC, as we used to call it. We moved to Pune in 1965. And I had wonderful time in college, and I have very inspiring teachers.
So that would be your PUC. Plus one,
it used
you
to be
11 plus
it
2,
used
no?
to be
Or
called
no?
something else, not PUC.
UC?
Yeah, something like that. BSc used to be a 4-year course for us. First,
Okay.
pre-degree, they used to call it then,
Okay.
PD.
Okay. Huh.
And then first year, second year, third year. So there I had wonderfully good teachers in zoology and botany, and one of them really inspired me. This lady is still around today, and I talk to her almost once a week.
Okay.
If I don't call her, she calls me. And she was one who really inspired me into...
What is her name?
Dr. Sani, Hema Sani. And she is now about 85 years, and she is bent over almost to 90 degrees, and she lives in a place which does not have electricity by choice, and she lives in the middle of Budwarpet, just completely urbanized all around her. But if you enter her place, you'll find an oasis of greenery, and she lives in a small one room in that area. And she doesn't want, till recently, she didn't have a mobile phone. Some of us forced her to have it so that we could at least talk to her. And she's very famous in Pune. There are so many articles and films made on her. So she's as simple as she used to be in my school.
So one inspiring teacher.
Absolutely. Even in my MSc, I had wonderfully good teachers. And so it was in college that I decided to go in for botany.
What made you select botany over zoology? Was it...
Well, in fact, I got more marks in zoology to begin with. But then I didn't like this whole idea of dissecting live animals. Pigeon. I could do rats and I could do all other invertebrates, fish and all that. But pigeon, you had to do these dry dissections those days, not in water. So you had to cut that and the blood will come out. And, somehow I thought, this is not for me. And then I chose...
Such interesting. I did BSc zoology, chemistry, zoology, microbiology. And my switch, now I work, of course, more on trees than zoology, was because I couldn't draw. I still cannot draw. And so I thought botany, there's so much drawing. Zoology, there's the occasional monkey which I would farm off to a fellow
But
classmate in
zoology
exchange
also
for
has a
tea.
lot of drawings. I thought all
Yeah,
the
things like worms I
anatomy.
could draw, but when it became a monkey or something like that, then I would
Right.
ask a friend to draw in exchange for a cup of tea or a samosa. But
Right.
this, the reasons we make choices which
I know.
shape careers.
Yeah,
it's very-
absolutely. But I had good teachers both in zoology and botany.
And was your curriculum based on my zoology curriculum? The problem was it was not an Indian curriculum. We were learning about all kinds of species that were something in New Zealand, something in the US.
Yeah.
Was your curriculum different? Because
Yeah,
Maharashtra
zoology,
had a
our
better.
basic book that was recommended to us was a textbook of zoology by Parker and Haswell. There was no good Indian books. I wonder if the situation has changed even now. I don't know. For some reason, we don't write the kind of great books they write.
Right.
They used to write those days
Yeah.
based on Indian material. And but our teachers were good, and they could, make up for what was not in those books.
Would they take you on field trips?
Absolutely.
Western Ghats? Or?
Absolutely. Every Sunday,
Huh.
we used to go from Pune. We take the 6:20 Janta Express and go to Khandala. And from Khandala, we walk back to Lonavala collecting all the plants. We used to take these huge
Huh.
plastic bags, 2-3 of them.
Huh.
And by the time, we'll sit down and have lunch. Our teacher used to come. This lady used to come with us. 3-4 of us. This was not required officially. But even when I went to MSc, this continued. She used to come with us. 3-4 of us would go. And I used to boast at that time that I could name every plant in Pune. That's not true anymore today. I've forgotten many. And then Pune has taken it. The urbanization has taken its toll.
So this is the seeds of your early knowledge, because
Absolutely.
you were just talking about this. You went for a walk through our university campus and you know every plant that is there. And
Not really every plant. That's an exaggeration, but
it's an experiential learning, which is
Yeah.
not a textbook learning. I've
Yeah.
seen that with you. It's a very sort of felt,
Yeah.
sensed
It is. So every Sunday we used to do this.
for 5
we
years.
And we come back to Lonavala, take the Lonavala local to Pune, come home by about 6:30, and then after having a cup of tea or getting relaxed for some time, you start making the herbarium sheets. That's an occupation which is very important. You touch the plant, you feel the plant, and you remember what your teacher told you, or some characteristics of that tree or the species or the specimen. And at that time, I think in my MSc, I had submitted some 500 herbarium specimens and things like that. I had made a special collections of grasses of Maharashtra and things like that, which stayed with me. I'm not a taxonomist, thank God. I wouldn't have been able to write this book
No, clearly
if I
not.
were only a taxonomist.
Yes, exactly.
But I had wide interest. Also, we had very interesting courses, like bee botany, about honeybees and, honeybee calendar for the year, which flowers come up during different months of the year, things like that. I had a course on landscape gardening. We learned about bio planning of Chandigarh and things like that. We had a course on palynology, the
And
science
this would
of...
be in the 70s.
Yes. I did my MSc in 71.
71.
So we used to go on all these tours,
It's very
botanical...
far-sighted. I mean, these biobotany, bee botany, and all of these
Absolutely good.
landscape planning.
Absolutely. Those teachers were also very good. Their field knowledge was excellent.
Why do you think Pune is such a center for these kinds of there's so many people who've come out, Madhav Gadgil, yourself. If you think of, the number of people who have come out, Ashish Kothari, or people who with a very good experiential knowledge of these things, which then fuels a lifelong passion for learning. What is it about Pune that does this?
Pune is traditionally an educational center. It still probably is. And, those days, all this molecular biology was not in such
Correct.
great vogue. And people used to know many things. Even if you studied algae, even our algae professor, Professor Balkrishnan, he could identify lots of flowering plants if we went with him on the field. So they used to have a much broader knowledge than what they narrowly did for their own PhDs. And that was something that was very interesting. And then I moved to Delhi. And then, I had always had a wider interest in botany, not limited to what I was doing for I worked on the nutrition of the embryo during its development from zygote onwards to the seed. But I didn't restrict myself to that. But in Delhi, they used to encourage this. Lots of foreigners used to come and give talks and lectures. Some of them spent 3-4 months in the botany department. It was a center of advanced study in botany those days.
In Delhi University?
In Delhi. After MSc, I moved to Delhi for a PhD.
Yeah. So that is Delhi University proper?
Delhi University. And we had heard such wonderful scientists those days. Professor Heslop Harrison, who was the director of the Royal Botanic Gardens. He's I think, spent 3 months in botany department, taking lectures and, generally holding seminars. There was this man called Taksajan, who was a Russian, who has presented a new concept of classification of flowering plants. People like this, we used to get inspired by these guys.
Which don't come in anymore, sadly.
Now the qualities have also
You would think in some ways the world should have become more open now, and it has, but in some ways it has become more closed.
See, you can also say this about, you can come at it on both sides of this thing. One is this rotating headships. There is so much that you can argue for it.
Correct.
And there is also
so much
you can say against it, because one of the drawbacks is you don't look too far from your 3-year term. You're there for 3 years or whatever number of years, and you don't plan ahead for your own. Those days, there was no rotation of heads. When I joined, Professor Johri used to be, Professor Maheshwari had just passed away. When I joined, I was one of those towering personalities, these guys. And one day he asked me, for some reason I became close to him. One day he asked me, young man, how many botanists do you know around the world? I said, not too many, sir, maybe 10, 15. He said, what's your age? And I had just, I started teaching those days. I said, I must have said some 30 or whatever my age was. He says, when I was your age, I knew 100 botanists abroad, and I knew an equal number of people within India. That's what you should be doing. and there used to be these colloquium, which we called. I became the secretary of the colloquium, convener of the colloquium. And one of the jobs we had to do was to send off people. Faculty goes abroad for a 3-month or 1-year study or something. You organize a party, give a send off, you have to speak. I must have botched up my first thing. I had gone from Pune, a small place, to Delhi, which was a big department. So he called me the next day. And those days, if you got a summons from Professor Johri, you'll say, what did I do today?
What have I done wrong?
So he says, so where do you live? He said. I said, in such and such a hostel. Single room or double room? He said. I said, single room, sir. Do you have a mirror in your room? I said, yes, sir. So, young man, from tomorrow, you must, when you speak in front of the mirror. Watch your facial expressions and practice. And that was the kind of things they used to tell me. Today, rotating heads don't have the authority to talk to somebody else's student like that. Those are different days. And
very practical advice.
Absolutely. And then once a year, every student in the botany department had to make a presentation on what research he has been doing. And it was my job as a convener to organize all those lectures. And he and all the faculty members would sit there and shoot arrows at you. Very incisive questions. Why are you walking around on the stage like a caged lion? You say, what am I doing? So it trains you to, conduct yourself in a certain way, even as a teacher. Later, I'm so grateful that I had these kind of mentors. And I have learned so much from these people, Professor Johri, Professor Mohan Ram, many other very nice people in Pune, in Delhi. I've
And some
been
of
very
them, like
fortunate.
Professor Mohan Ram, I mean, the few times I've met him, and I never had very long conversations, but he seemed like someone who was not just knowledgeable and nice, but so keen to pass on the knowledge to others.
Absolutely. Always you used to feel when you went with him on a tour. I got in touch with him more after I joined the government. And we used to be on several committees together, and we had committees on which he used to be our expert. Going with him somewhere was like reading an encyclopedia in botany. Economic botany was generally considered a dull subject, but the
It
way
can be
he
very
would tell
dull when
you
you read it.
something about it, about a plant and
Ah.
its history and so on, amazingly good. Even when I started teaching, there used to be, now it's no longer there. There used to be a small course for first year BSc students in botany. It was called Plants and Human Affairs. It was such a lovely course. Much of all that I got excited about comes from those 5-10 years that I taught undergraduates about plants and human affairs, how plants have influenced history, how they have influenced geography, how
And
they
what
have.
textbooks did you use? What readings did you use for those?
Well, there were several papers. Professor Maheshwari must have designed that course in those days, and he himself wrote several articles on this. Tulips, for example, and the economy of the whole of Holland those days. The tulip mania.
Correct.
You wouldn't read those in textbooks. That he used to write articles on all this indigo. The story of the breadfruit and the mutiny of the bounty, on which movies have been made. I think some 6 or 7 Hollywood movies have been made on this story, but not so much on botany part, but
Botany,
some
yeah.
other thing. But breadfruit, how much trouble it has caused around the world and changed history. Tulips, indigo, and so many other plants. Botany, they say, is dull. I would challenge them and say, talk about some of these things,
Because it has to be written well. And if it's the standard textbook which says this plant was indigo, was manufactured here, first found here, then, you can hear a teacher droning about it, but you can talk about it like a movie and make the people who fought for it, killed for it, spied, smuggled. So many things.
Rubber.
Yeah.
You take any of those important plants which have had an impact on our economy, our history of geography across the world, not only India, but the whole reason Westerners came to India was because of
the plants,
spices and
spices
indigo and so on and so forth. And it's thrilling stories. You can make them come alive if you read them well. And
so, did you know by the time that you were doing your PhD that you wanted to teach?
Yes, I started teaching while you were I got a CSIR fellowship. And then in between, there were at that time honors courses, went from the main botany department to colleges. And there was an opening of some 20-25 posts. I was fortunate enough to get into one of those colleges. So,
which college?
I taught in SGTB Khalsa College.
Okay.
And the first batch of honors, third year, when I started teaching, came to colleges those days, and it was very exciting. At that time, by the time I joined, there were others who had already joined in the first year, second year before me, and I was given the topics of anatomy and embryology to teach, because they were not very popular courses. You can probably fall asleep while teaching or learning them, is what the general perception was. But I said, fine, give it to me. And it's not only what you teach, it's also how you teach. That is very important. I always remember this, long ago I read this about a Hollywood comedian who said that a comedian is not a person who opens a funny door. He's a person who opens the door in a funny way. And I never forgotten. Somehow it has sat in my brain for so long. I said, paleobotany can be made so interesting. I had teachers who used to teach us. This Professor Mujumdar, who used to be our teacher in Ferguson College, he started out. He used to be a guest teacher for us to teach us about paleobotany. We used to sit spellbound in his class because he used to make all those fossil plants come alive. So anatomy can be taught so interestingly. Embryology could be so. It's part of it is the subject, part of it is who is teaching you, and so these were great experiences.
So when you were teaching, were you continuing your explorations around Delhi? Because the plants of Delhi, they must have been very different from what you were used to in Pune. And so how did you get familiar with that? Were there similar groups going for walks? Did you go with your students? How did you get to know
I
what
was fortunate to have good colleagues as well, and in the college those days. And our seniors were good mentors, and they set good standards for us to follow. And I had colleagues, 4 of us joined together, and we were a very nice bunch of people. I mean, very close. One of them was a formal taxonomist as well, Dr. Gurcharan Singh, who was he studied in Kashmir, and he joined here. And he knew most of these. He was also, of course, a little handicapped, he used to say, because he knew all the Himalayan plants well. But Delhi is different.
Delhi is different. It comes into the semi-arid.
Absolutely.
Track.
And then we used to go around taking students for field excursions. And it was great fun. And we continued these walks. And, I have this problem. I can't really remember people so well. But I have seen a plant 20 years ago. It will somewhere ring a bell inside me. I mean, I honestly, I can't remember people so easily.
It's plants that make you come to life.
They do.
Yes.
So it is probably that kind of...
So can you tell us any story of a very interesting encounter you had in those days with plants or with your students?
We used to take students for excursions to... I think I have participated in excursions to Nainital. We used to do the same with students as well, trek the whole way. Mysore, for example, from Mysore town to a place called Kempty Falls. Today you go there by the car or a bus or something. So in those days, we used to trek with students in tow, and we used to climb hills and walk down, and it was always fun. And that habit of having done that in Pune very rigorously, it was always a great source of joy. And I have enjoyed those excursions so much. We went to Ooty. We brought the students to Ooty once. We have been to other places around Delhi. So wherever you go, then you look at plants. It's a habit that grows on you. And get excited. Oh, I found this plant 15 years ago, So now I'm finding it, now. So that 15 years ago, what you saw rings a bell somewhere here. And we did this even as students. We went to Goa in my BSc. We went to Castle Rock. Those days, Castle Rock had nothing other than a railway station. We slept on the railway platform, all the boys, and the girls had this small waiting room, and they occupied that. And our teachers also used to sleep on the platform with us. Today, you don't do those things, right? And they were so nice. Be amongst us, be one of us. And it was, lovely. And when you do all these herbarium sheets, when you come back from this thing on a platform, all these goats and cows used to stay. Morning you get up and hear this, bah! And then you say, well, where are we? Oh, this platform. It's okay.
As long as your specimens have not been eaten.
Fortunately, you kept them away. But you also, take out those twigs or leaf or something, so they would eat all that. And it was lovely.
Yeah.
And it's that habit doesn't, escape from you. It stays with you.
So and then you moved to the DBT.
Yes, after 10 years of teaching, I moved to DBT. And by that time, I started feeling that teaching in a college kind of it limits your horizon a bit. We didn't have MScs those days in colleges, and even now, I don't think there is MSc in colleges. It's only in the
The
main
Del
department.
main.
So then I moved to Department of Biotechnology. I'm sorry, it was not. There was no Department of Biotechnology. It was DST, or Department of Science and
Oh, it
Technology.
was DST then.
And at that time, this was a board,
Okay.
National Biotechnology Development Board. It
Ah.
had Professor Menon, who was the Planning Commission person. He also was the chairman of the board. And this board had a service cell within the Department of Science and Technology. And those days, we used to be interviewed by the UPSC. I didn't know anyone there. But I had done an exhibition on, the genetics, International Congress of Genetics was held for the first time in India, in Delhi, in 84, when I was still in the college. 83 or something like that, if I remember correctly. And that was another great experience. I volunteered to help set up an exhibition on the genetic resources of India. And they had taken some 4,000 square feet of area in the Natural History Museum, because I think thousands of people used to come for that genetics congress those days. It was held in Ashoka Hotel, huge halls and so on. And along with that, there was an exhibition to be held on genetics in India. And at that time, in the 80s, there was not too much work on genetics or molecular biology in this country. So Professor Mohan Ram was in charge of this exhibition, among other things, in the Genetics Congress. So he said he wanted somebody to be his second person in knows plants and or some science and so on. So he asked me, and without hesitation, I said, I'll come and do this. And we started off, I think, about 3 months before the exhibition started. And for the first time, I asked for an academic leave from my college. And everybody said, for an exhibition? You want to go and take leave, academic leave for setting up an exhibition? There's no rule to give you an academic leave. So then I said, okay, I'll take my earned leave. So I applied for earned leave. All my colleagues said, what a crazy thing you're doing. Who takes leave for setting up an exhibition? But I did that, and I was very happy I did that eventually. I learned so much about genetics in India and germplasm collections of hundreds of
So if I'm
plants.
right, you cannot do the same thing continuously. You have to keep learning something new.
Absolutely. It was such a learning thing. Those 3 months I spent, we designed so many pamphlets. There was silkworm breeds,
So you
buffalo
took
breeds.
personal leave for 3 months to work?
I took my personal leave for 3 months because the college wouldn't give me an academic leave. And
which must have included leave without pay and things like that.
Probably
because 3 months, who has that kind of
so
leave?
it was, I would do that again any day, because I learned so much, about. I never heard of cow. How many breeds of cows we have here, or
How many do
buffaloes?
Many.
Many of them. So many of them. And we had contacted, our Professor Mohan Ram had contacted so many institutions across India to send materials to be exhibited in this thing. We had somebody from Department of Audiovisual and Publicity who had just retired, with an expert on exhibitions and setting up things and so on. And my job was to actually design these pamphlets in a jargon-free language for people to come and, understand about those. Then was the time when I learned about sericulture, and that we had 4 types of silkworms commercially used in India. For example, Parsi blood group, why is it special? And genetics of Parsis community, they're inbreeding.
So they have a specific blood
They
group.
have these genes. And then there was these lots of these crops, sugarcane, how many types of sugarcane, hybrids between bamboo and sugarcane those
There's
days.
so much we don't know. So I'm just thinking now, you said Parsis. My father's family must be, again, original inbreeding somewhere along the, how smaller South Indian some groups are, has some missing proteins on the DNA. So it's not a blood group, but basically that means that we cannot receive blood transfusions very easily.
Yeah,
Because there's always an
Parsis are
extra.
totally, they're a close community. Interfaith marriages are not very common among them. The numbers, of course, are going down now. But those days, all these things were exhibited.
And we don't know much about, because Parsis are a community, in some sense, one knows about them. But think of how many other groups there must be in India that we have no knowledge of.
Absolutely. Yeah, many groups.
I realized that when doing some blood transfusions to my father, that there are many of these
Absolutely.
these skin
Such
groups that we don't know anything
marriages
about.
are common in South, as
Yes,
you said,
exactly.
also. And some work is being done now, the genetics of.
But insufficient.
Of course, the kind of diversity that we have in this country. It's
So that exhibition, you then talked about when you came to DBT, or you used
No,
the
when I
NDBT
went
order?
to attend this UPSC interview, I didn't know a single person on the board. And then this knowledge of these 3 months, a general knowledge on biology, I wouldn't have known all these things if I had not done that exhibition. Although my friends and colleagues thought I did a crazy thing. But as I said, I would do that again any day. You can't trade off these things with any other thing,
So that helped you get
that
through.
helped you in my interview. They asked me a range of questions, which, what are petrocrops, for example. Those days, biodiesel was not
Okay,
in
they call them
vogue.
petrocrops.
They used to call them petrocrops.
Oh, I didn't even know there was such a thing.
And, things like nitrogen fixation and genes for nitrogen fixation, legumes and kinds of things, which you won't do when you do a PhD. You don't do all this, right? So it came so handy. And that's how, I've never been a very narrowly interested person. I used to collect so many. Those days, you didn't have computers when I did my PhD. And we used to have this thing called current contents.
Exactly. That's how I did all my literature review for my PhD.
Every Tuesday, it used to come to the library.
Yes.
And many of us used to be waiting, I must be the first to go there and get hold of this.
Because if you don't and someone grabs your copy of the magazine, then you have to wait for, yes.
So we used to have these index cards. Yes. And each reference you write down on the index card. And then we used to have these printed postcards. And you used to send it to these authors and then get reprints. Even
when I was doing my PhD. So for us at IISc, it was Wednesdays. And I used to go and take this thing. And, postage was very expensive. So Madhav Gadgil, because, of his generosity, he would pay for that out of his own budget. So I used to every week send about 20 postcards. 6 months, 1 year, 2 years later, you would get about 10 of them. Maybe 5 you would get. Sometimes I've got them 3 years later. Sometimes I've never got them.
Yeah.
And you made do with that, right?
Absolutely.
Whatever you could do.
I think I had built up a collection of some 12. We used to put them in these cardboard boxes, 100, 200 reprints can sit in one. And I must have had some 12, 15 such boxes during my PhD days. And also, they used to send them in wonderfully nice envelopes, from these US and Europe.
With this little thread that connected them.
And also those stamps.
Yes, those stamps.
You could see so many interesting stamp collections you made. And Delhi University also had this flower show, annual flower show. And they used to have a very good garden. And garden in charge used to be one of the botany professors. And those people in botany department, many of them were very good. And they used to be very critical of you. But then those days you used to feel, oh my God, I did this mistake, But then you learned so much from them.
So if I can do a quick shortcut and get to the trees, you did the time so you were in DBT for how many years? 12 years?
No, I joined in 84 and until my superannuation in 2012. I served in DBT for the major part of my
Okay.
life. For the first decade, more or less a decade, I taught.
Huh.
And then when I joined DBT, I also used to go on Saturdays to the South Campus and take a course on biotechnology, resource enhancement through biotechnology for MSc environmental science students in South Campus of Delhi as a guest faculty. Saturdays, I used to go and take those classes. It has continued for about how many years? 8, 9 years, 7, 8 years. I must have done that also. So I never lost my
You never lost your touch with
the
yes,
students.
Right. And then when you superannuated, that's when the whole idea of these iconic trees of India came.
In a way, yes. In DBT, ideally, as you grow up in a hierarchy, you become so much busy, and you don't have the time to write books and all that. I never had that time, Last 7, 8 years, I wouldn't even have enough time to peep out of the window if the rain came or it's not. There was some days you had 8 meetings, some days you had 10 meetings, some task force meetings, some this, that. So you had the time to do this. Then when I superannuated, I joined the National Institute of Immunology in Delhi. It was one of our institutions. And they said, one of the things we want you to do is to do this. We are basically a research institute. We don't have any contact with students, outreach programs. So one of the things I was supposed to help them with was an outreach program. So I made them sign some 13, 14 MOUs with the different colleges in Delhi, where the people of scientists at NII could go and take some classes. And those students could come and visit their labs. Some are in, vacation training programs and things like that. So I was there for 3 years in NII. And it's one of the most beautiful campuses that I have seen. And earlier we were talking about exotic and indigenous trees there. And there's a wonderful blend of indigenous and exotic trees. Unfortunately, they don't have a data of when those trees were introduced, who brought them, and so on. So when I saw them there, and you watch the seasons being changed because of the trees flowering, leaf shedding, and the botanist in me couldn't resist doing something about it. So I said, I'm the first botanist to land up in a National Institute of Immunology, and most probably I'll be the last one too. And these guys are wonderfully good guys. And NII is one of our best institutions across India, published with the best of them and so on. But they don't know much about plants. Molecular biologists, immunologists,
They just live in that campus with beautiful trees and they
yes,
don't know much about
them. They're proud of their campus, mind you. And they are interested enough to enjoy all that. But technically, of course, you wouldn't know this is that tree or, they enjoy that. And they are very proud to have that. And also the landscaping is so beautifully done there. I think it was done by Mr. Raj Rewal, who was one of the great architects, the one who designed Hall of Nations and so on in Pragati Maidan, some of the embassy buildings in Delhi. A very famous guy. And you don't know where the offices were done and where the residences started. So beautifully blended with the landscaping, rolling landscape with so many beautiful trees, which have come from somewhere from outside India, side by side, growing with those indigenous trees of the Aravalis and so on. So I thought that let me write about 1 tree per month to these people, but in a language which they can understand, not too much heavy on jargons, and tell them about this tree in a way that a layperson gets excited about them. Say, what are the stories around this tree, fables around them, philatelic details about them. Is there a poem on that tree? Things like that, combined with some botany to tell them what is this in a very simple language. And the first one I wrote and sent them by email, and the kind of warmth which they received, that, I was very happy with that. So they said, please continue doing this as long as you're with us. Must have done about 12, 13 such. 1 month a tree. As soon as it came to flower, I started writing, photographed them, put them on their emails and so on. And it was wonderful. And they have a beautiful collection of trees. So then I also did some tree walks for college teachers, students, NII people, and so on. And it was very exciting. But then everything was going well. But suddenly I realized, I'm talking about trees to all these people. How much do I know about trees, honestly? I said, I hardly know anything. Which is the oldest tree in India? Which is the largest tree in India? Which trees have played in India's a role in India's history or politics or culture, religion? Individual trees. I mean, which trees have winged seeds? We don't teach these things in classrooms, which can make things exciting to students. And somehow I felt that the joy has gone out of the classroom somehow. And I said, first I must learn. That is where this idea of writing about trees.
And this was when, which year did you think of starting the?
Must have been around 2000. I must have joined NII around 2013. So around 2014, I must have suddenly realized, or 15, somewhere thereabouts.
Because I think in 17 it was that I first heard of your work. Professor Raghavendra Gadakar told me, my dear friend Natesh, because we were starting Cities and Canopies, and he said, you have to talk to Natesh because he is doing this amazing work on the iconic trees of India, and it is very completely different perspective.
So that was, then I thought, let me find out myself before I tell others. I mean, I have no right to talk about these things. I am so ignorant. Then, first time I found a winged seed of a tree which I had not seen earlier. It was so exciting to me. I mean, I said, which is the oldest tree? Nobody, even botanists don't know these details, honestly.
It's a lay person thinks very differently about trees, and a scientist, quote unquote, very different. We have to learn. So what I'm curious is, how do you step outside your scientist hat and think about what people would want to hear?
I don't know. As I said, the interest that anything generates in your own mind is conditioned by many factors. What makes you excited? Something, a history around that plant, or it's being involved in something more than a mere flower or a leaf or bark or something, And if it has played a role in your history or your country's history, or there is a religious sentiment attached to a tree, those are the things that, connects you directly to that thing.
Gives you that emotional connect.
Emotional connect. Yes. And the people who don't study botany have that connection too. Yes. Much more probably than those of us who go into science. We become cynical after some time with some things at least. Yes. And we say, oh, yeah, theek hai. But people are connected to trees in ways that are amazingly diverse. There is a wonderful book called Meeting with Trees. It's just 32 pages or something. It's about this guy who is a young boy, 7, 8 years, and they have a backyard in the US somewhere. And the father, one day he's making a chair for his father and the boy's grandfather. He calls this boy and say, I have done this, now I'm doing this varnishing of this. Let this, dry up. Let's go back to the backyard and I'll show you some trees. So he takes this boy along, and then there's a huge oak tree there in their backyard. And he introduces the boy to the tree and the tree to the boy. It's so wonderful idea. Many of us do this, or we go through some of these experiences. If you have grown up with plants, you identify with your tree or your bush.
We did a small study with colleagues in Kochi. And in Kochi, many of the people who have trees in their backyard have names for their tree.
There you are.
They're part of the family. They
Yes,
have a name for
exactly.
them.
They're part of your
Yeah.
family. So, but over years, some of city slicks have got so divorced from these things. So it's only about this book, and it's so beautifully written
So
with
I have
paintings and
one
so on.
question that occurs to me now, because I know you have a small, and we were talking about this at an earlier time, a small and carefully curated reading list. But your references, you cannot give me an exact count. How many books would you have read, and how many papers would you have read to eventually write
For
a book?
this book?
Yeah.
I
And
think
let's count in the thousands, approximately.
I think I have provided a list of
No, not what you provided. What
Ah.
have you read? Which you're not.
Okay.
Yeah.
The references itself, they run into 26 pages here.
But you must have read many more.
I have read many more.
So how much?
I have
500,000, 2,000,
very difficult to say.
10,000?
Different trees require different kinds of reading. For example, if I wrote about a religious thing, for Parijat, for example, when I was writing about the Baobab, I have read about 6 Puranas, where, in English, unfortunately, I'm not good in Sanskrit, not at all knowledgeable at all. I read them in English translations. Yeah, and then it's amazing. And that's when I came to know, when I was writing about Parijat, the same Purana will have separate and different, completely unconnected story about Parijat, for example. And it's very confusing to you. One page 8, you'll find a story that it came from through this churning of the ocean, Amrit Manthan and all that. In page 12 or 18, you come across another story that, this was created by Lord Shiva for his wife Parvati. A third story, some 20 pages later, will tell you that sage Kashyapa made Parijat because he was so pleased with his wife, and he asked her, I can give you, grant a boon. What would you like to have? She said, she had a very huge shopping list apparently. And he said, well, I can't do all that. Instead, I'll give you a tree which is like a kalpavriksha. You can go and ask for whatever you like from it. So he created Parijat. And if you go to Brahma Purana, this is all in Vishnu Purana, and there is Shiva Purana, there is Brahma Purana and all that. Padma Purana, it's not Brahma Purana, Padma Purana. There is a whole version of indoor Parijata plants inside the palace. They are growing. And it's confusing at the end of the day. When I'm a layman, I'm not an expert in mythology, I'm a scientist. I would like some neat answers to these questions, How can
you
Parijata originate with all these unconnected stories, different people coming at it and so on? So I called up somebody in Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute in Pune, and I said, look, I'm totally confused. I was better off before I read all these Puranas. Why is this so? And he started laughing. He was an expert on Puranas. He said, why are you confused? I said, look, page 8, you write something. Page 18, you write something. This is not what I'm used to as a scientist. I want some rational explanation for somebody must have, made it. 8 people cannot make this. So he says, no. Puranas have been written over hundreds of years. They are people of different provinces, different, regions. It's not by a single author, multiple authors in different geographies of India. And whatever they thought about it, they wrote. That's all. So why are you confused about it? I said, which story is true? I said, all of them may be true. Who knows? So it's interesting, I for the same reason I was writing about chinars, I read through Akbarnama. And I would never have read that, the English translation is available. In my normal course as a botany teacher or whatever, a biotechnology guy,
you wouldn't read Akbarnama.
I wouldn't read Akbarnama. So for writing this book, that was one of the great joys of.
So how many years did it take you?
So
for research?
It could have taken me less, but consciously, I started off with a working list, making that through browsing on the internet, looking at gazetteers, looking at this and that, word of mouth. So I prepared a list of 300 potential trees that are remarkable. And for that, you have to make some reading initially, even to make up your mind to say that is remarkable. So you had to go through different, these are never given in botany books, honestly. And either press releases, media, electronic or print media, and so on and so forth, forestry journals, and so on and so forth. So you had to read those different kinds of literatures. For example, I have written about a tree in this book on a kirni tree in a place called Ranakpur in Rajasthan, where there's a wonderfully huge temple made of marble, built in the shape of a celestial aeroplane. And this architectural details of that aeroplane, a fellow who was a courtier in the king's court, Rana Kumbha in his case, dreamt of this thing. And he had to translate that dream into a drawing. He was not gifted enough to do that. So he explained this to so many people in his among his peer group. Nobody satisfied, came up with a drawing which he thought he saw in his dream. So finally, there was an eccentric guy, and he gave it to him, and he came back with a drawing which said, "This is what I saw in my dream." Now that's a 3-story building, and there are hundreds of pillars in that thing. Every pillar has a different design, by the way. There is one tree there on the top floor of this marble edifice.
On the top floor.
Nothing else, no other living things other than human beings there, except this one single kirni tree. I saw this in an architectural magazine. I don't know, it's some serendipitous thing. I was just browsing through something. Suddenly I saw this wonderful tree. I said, which tree is this? They don't write about the tree in architectural journals. They sing paeans about the architecture, the pillars, and why this temple, it took 50 years to complete, and so on and so forth. So I kept on looking, going back, and I contacted my friends in Jodhpur. It's close to Jodhpur, this Ranakpur. They also said, we don't know about this tree, sir. We never been to that place. Who would go to a temple to see a tree anyway? So then I said, the reason I'm telling you this is I decided that I'll go and see every tree that I will include in this book. Not write it from sources, secondary sources. That's why it took me nearly some 7-8 years. And take out the COVID period during that 3 years were a waste. Not a waste in the terms of not having been able to go and visit. But I used that to write and all that time.
I wanted to then actually, if we can conclude with one story that you told me, which struck and stayed with me, of the one tree that you were not able to finally see. The
three trees, I said, barring 3.
But the one that you told me about, which you climbed up a hill. Can you just sort of quickly tell us what
it's a very interesting story, actually.
Because to me, it's a remarkable testament of your passion to find these trees, really.
No, wherever I went, I used to go with a potential list of that area. Suppose I went to Kashmir, I would say I have these 10 trees that I must see. If I go to Sikkim, I have these list of so many. So like this, I went to Nagaland. I had a list of trees with me. And one of these trees was the so-called tallest rhododendron in the world. That was what I had read somewhere. And it grows on the Japfu mountain in Nagaland, which is the second highest peak next to Mount Saramati. And then I was fortunate to have as my, a friend whom I had never met before. I was introduced to him just a week before I went there. He was the director of the S&T Council in Nagaland, Kohima. And I told him, look, I want to see this tree. He said, yes, we will take you. And it was discovered by two Angami Nagas way back. And they used to go hunting, or most of them still do, and with their guns and so on, and they go there. And these people saw this wonderful, the Japfu mountain is full of several species of rhododendron. It's a riot of colors if you go in the season: red, blue, white, yellow. Rhododendron is a beautiful tree. It's a gift of India to the rest of the world, actually. Now, of course, Europe, it's found everywhere, and US, it's found everywhere. It's Himalayan, some of these rhododendrons. So, the guys who discovered that, two of them, one of them was still alive, the other had passed away. So, we went on the previous day to meet him, and I asked whether he would be willing to go with us and do us the honor of showing the tree himself. And he was very delighted. He was older than me. I was perhaps 69 at that time. He was older than me. And I said, how much time will it take? He said, sir, half an hour to go, half an hour to come back. The rest of the time, however much you want to spend near the tree. I said, climbing for half an hour shouldn't be a big issue with me. So my host said, I'll take you. Morning, I'll come to your hotel and we'll take off. So he came. And when I go to the foothills of this village where we need to climb, there was some 15, 18 people in our party. One of them is carrying a gun, and several of them are carrying food and, this kind of basket. Others have come. I was wondering, just half an hour to go, half an hour to come. Now, why are we making such a big production of all this? Yeah. Why do we need a man with a gun here? So we started climbing up. It was just a season when it was raining. There was no rain this week when I landed there. Previous week it has rained. Tropical rainforest. We started climbing up. And it so happened that it's a steep mountain as well. And more than that, there are several of these streams coming down from above. And you have to walk through them. And as I started counting, I lost count. There were so many streams on that thing, and you can hardly see the ground, full of weeds and whatever, ground flora. And we started climbing, and we kept climbing. Half an hour is over. We started at 9:30. By 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock, we reached the halfway point. And we haven't seen the tree because you have to go further, another distance to see this.
Another half an hour.
And by this time, I had developed breathlessness. And I had this, I must have slipped and fallen down several times. Fortunately, I didn't hurt myself crossing through these streams. And more than anything else, although they had done all that they could, leeches. And they had painted my shoe with the mustard oil, salt somewhere all along the boot. I was wearing a long, pair of socks till my knees and all that. By the time we reached the halfway point, I look at myself, there are 25 leeches on my feet and some here on my back and neck and so on. And we had lunch there. And they saw my speed, and this guy who saw the tree, he's older than me, but he was, running practically. And I am a city guy. However much botanizing I had done, by that time I was very breathless and all that. Then they said, sir, you do one thing. We will leave this boy with you. And we will go ahead with your camera. Then you come slowly and we will be near the tree. And I started climbing with this boy. And that guy, I asked him, do you know where to go? He says, no, I don't know. Okay. I said, okay, let's call them. He says, sir, I have a signal, but I don't have charge in my phone. And I looked at my phone. My phone has charge, but no signal. So how do you contact these guys who are gone near the tree? So we walked. And by 4 o'clock, northeast, the sun starts setting. Yeah. And we are nowhere near the tree. Then finally, fortunately, for about a window of 1 minute or something, the guy's phone caught signal somewhere. And then they told him, if Dr. Natesh is there, please ask him not to come any further because you have to still walk for 2 more hours to reach the tree. And we have taken his camera and we will take a picture and bring this back. Then to go back to the halfway camp, it would still take me 1 more hour or 1.5 hours. And to reach the tree, it would take me 2 more hours or
Right.
something, or 3 more hours. And it was out of the question. So they told me, you go back to the halfway camp with that boy. And that boy was virtually by that time holding on to my arm and pulling me down. And I mean, taking me down because it's so slippery and I keep falling down. And then by the time we reached the halfway camp, it was so pitch dark. And I said, by the time lactic acid metabolism takes place in all your muscles, I couldn't, get up from where I'm sitting down. And by the time these guys came down, it was 7:30 in the night. Everywhere is pitch dark and no light except the torch they carry. So I told them, look, I'm not going to get up from this place because I can't move my muscles anymore. I can't, I'm breathless when I'm climbing up like this. And going through in this night, I can't wade through those streams. If I fall down and break something, I'll be a much worse burden than what I am already to you. So leave me here tonight. Morning we'll come. I'll come. You leave somebody with me, just language or something. We have to negotiate the road. They said, no, that won't be allowed because by morning you can't even, move your finger. It would become much worse. So we have to go now. I said, how do I walk? I can't see. And there are streams too, at least 30, 25 streams through which you have to wade. And this guy was marvelous person. I had never met him before. The Naga, this SNT director, Dr. Hise, he said, don't worry, I'll get 4 people from Kohima and they will hold a big bamboo, one of them at that end, one of them at the other end. The 2 others one fellow will go with a torch behind you, the other fellow will walk ahead of you with his torch. So you hold on to the bamboo and walk slowly. That's what we did.
So from Kohima, then 4 people turned up.
From Kohima, 4 people turned
in the
up.
night.
In the night. And by the time we left that place, it was already 9:30, 10. And these guys cut down a bamboo, and then one of them is holding at each end, and somewhere in the middle, I am holding on to this, and another bamboo stick on my right hand. And I count, 1 step at a time. Like these cricketers say, these days, we do go by overs. This over, I must do 4 runs or 6 runs or whatever is required. I won't think of the 20th over. So I said, okay. So I won't think of the next step. Let me put this step. By the time I came down, so slowly walking, pitch dark everywhere. I said, aren't there snakes here in this night? Aren't there, anything that could be there? And they said there were tigers in that place. So by the time we came down after all this, it was 1:30 in the morning. By that time, his wife has come there near the foothill and with a big flask of coffee or tea or something. And she has collected many others. Her husband was also with me. She was a medical doctor. And some 15 people have come to watch the fun. How we are able to come down. By the time I came down, everybody started clapping. Sir, you made it. I said, you thought I won't anyway. So I could never see the tree. They fortunately took the pictures. And it was one of the trees that I spent so much energy, but I could not see the tree. It has a Guinness Book record of being the tallest, which has not been challenged.
You have to go there first to challenge it. Yes. No.
So it's amazing.
But Dr. Natesh, this has been a truly wonderful conversation. I wanted to make sure we ended with this tree so that people understand that when you write a book of this kind, I think it's important for us to all have madnesses in this world. Because if you don't have a passion for something, You can write nowadays with the days of internet research, you can do something, 5 minutes and write a blog. And I think it's important to show people it's a testament to nature, but also I think a testament to you're a very rare person. Let me put it this way. And I think there is
I don't know
it is a privilege to be talking
rare
to
or
you.
anything. I don't know, but by the time I went home, I was truly. I mean,
You
I
couldn't
couldn't
move.
move my hand. I sat down, and they had brought this jeep to go back to the hotel and all that. I couldn't get up from my seat. I couldn't put my foot onto the car. Somebody had to push me in. And this gentleman, he said, "You are not going back to the hotel. You're coming with us to our home." And somebody made some very hot water, put some salt in it, and said, "You have a bath. You'll get some relaxation." But it was not too much, but it was a great thing in the middle of the night. They brought me food. I stayed in their house for that night. And, this is one thing I must put this on record, that people are so nice. This country is a great country. We speak different languages. We speak, in different tones sometimes. We dress differently. We eat differently. But underneath, there is something. It binds us all. And you feel so humbled. Somebody who has never seen me before. People are so good. They're eager to share their knowledge. They welcome you into their midst. How I never dreamt that I would get to spend a time with these people.
Right.
They looked after me so well. Next morning, I couldn't get up or get down from my bed. I had to go to Meghalaya from there. And I called up my daughter quickly and said, "Please postpone this ticket. I can't move today. At least make it for day after tomorrow or tomorrow or something." And then that day I stayed with them. Next morning, I had to go back to, Imphal from this place, Kohima, by a car. And then I went to Meghalaya, and there I had to see those bridges.
So it's
And
not like this threw you off seeing trees. You continued.
so,
Yeah.
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 But I tell you, after all this, it's amazing. People are so good. And one of the big gains that I have accrued through this book, and I've seen large parts of India from north, east, south, center, whatever. And people are great. And people who knew me, people who never had heard of me, people who knew me slightly, they shared their homes, they brought their vehicles. When they knew you're doing something, and this taxi driver I hired in Sikkim, this guy, when I told him, he said, "What are you going to see in Sikkim?" That I was a tourist. I said, "I've come to see some trees." He said, "What? You come to see trees? What trees?" He says, I said, "I have a list of trees and you have to take me." "Sir, where have you come from?" He said, "I come from Delhi." "Delhi से आप यहाँ पेड़ देखने आए?" So he was like that. Took me wherever, and gradually we started. And he started appreciating, and been driving this taxi for so many years. Nobody has taken to these places. With you, I have learned so much. This UNESCO World Heritage Site, where this tree is part of that, and so on. And last day, when he was coming out, he says, "Give me 5 minutes. I have to go somewhere." I said, "Take your time. I'll come back." He comes back with a small gift wrap box for me. And I said, "What are you giving me? I should be giving you something for having ferried me around
Right.
your beautiful state, and you took us so nicely everywhere." He says, "No, sir, you have opened my eyes to, the trees of Sikkim today. And what is more, you are going to put our trees in front of the world. So I'm so happy that I went with you." And he gave me a couple of those porcelain mugs, those Chinese. So I was almost in tears, that, you feel so humbled. And I wouldn't exchange this for, anything in the world.
It's been fascinating, Dr. Natesh, listening to your stories, and such a pleasure to talk to you. And I think I would really say that everyone should go read this book and listen to stories like this through the book. It's been such a joy, really.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.